A lot of times society tells us as women, you need to either be the stay-at-home mom, or you need to be the working mom,
right.
or you need to be the working woman who hasn't had children. If you really want to succeed in your career or be success in your field, then you can't be a mother as well, and you can't be a wife. But you really can. It's all about prioritizing and chasing your dreams. And it is so important to have just people around you who support you, whether that be your significant other, your spouse, your friends, your family, people who will continuously encourage you, because there are going to be ups and downs, right?
From the grit and the grind to successful minds, live from the entertainment capital of the world, your hosts, Jillian Batchelor and Daryl Hannah.
Hey guys, it's Jillian Batchelor with Vegas Real Talk, and today I have a special guest. I have Shane Jasmine. She's an amazing attorney with Young Law Firm, and I'm going to have her tell you everything about Young Law Group and what they do, their estate planning, but so much more. Shane, thank you so much for being here with me today. Tell me a little bit about your firm, what you guys do, who you are, everything our viewers want to know.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Of course.
We were talking earlier about how basically I was raised here in Las Vegas, and I didn't start my own law firm until about 5 years ago.
Wow.
But just to kind of give you a little backstory, when my family moved here, I was in elementary school. My dad was in the airline business and was working for another company, but started his own business after a few years.
I love the entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
There you go.
Right.
Okay.
And he started his own airline. He hired people, including an attorney. And unfortunately, that attorney, with the help of some third parties, took advantage of him. And
so sad.
they ended up taking control of my dad's business, pushed him out, and they ended up running it into bankruptcy. Wow. So as you can imagine, that was, even though I was very young, it really shaped my perspective and my outlook on, on business ownership and entrepreneurship and the legal, community and things like that. So one of the things that my dad had instilled in me, my mom and my dad, was the value of education and empowering yourself so that you can make sure that you're making the best decisions. So that's kind of a common thread that has been woven in throughout my life. And when I was in school, I mentioned to you also, I graduated from Green Valley High School as a valedictorian, and met my husband in high school. So we graduated and have been together ever since. We're high school sweethearts. After graduating from high school, we went to California, and I was going to Pepperdine. I graduated in 3 years. So, Malibu, like terrible place to live.
But you guys, so she's not only beautiful, she's smart, she's educated, she's driven. Okay, tell us more.
Oh, thank you. So graduated from Pepperdine in 3 years, early, thankfully, because I was actually 5 months pregnant with my twins, whose birthday is today.
Oh, shout out to your twins.
Yeah.
They're twin girls, because you have five girls.
I have 5 girls.
You guys, she's had 5 children that are all, you're raising strong, independent, beautiful. I had the opportunity to meet some of your daughters. So I love that. I love seeing that you're raising these women to follow kind of in your footsteps as far as just being smart, educated, go out there, get what they need from the world.
Yeah. One thing that my daughters are doing and have done that I didn't have the opportunity to do is play basketball in college. So I played basketball in high school, and actually, just going back to my husband, how we met was at a track meet where
so now your daughters are tall enough, because I wouldn't know anything about that. I only stand a little over 5 foot tall.
Yeah.
People would step on me to play basketball.
Right. Well, they're not super tall. They're about 5'6". We're about the same height, but they played guard, so point guard, shooting guard. Yeah. So so after I found out that I was pregnant with them, I was supposed to go right into law school that August, but that's when they were born. Yeah. So Charles and I came back home. I stayed home with them for a year, and on their first birthday is when I started law school.
Wow.
So after I graduated from law school, and I really don't know how I was able to manage that, but obviously I had the support of my husband, and both of our families are here, so they were very helpful, supporting us as we got through that phase of life and graduated from law school. I got the job at the big firm, the big fancy firm, which at the time, when I started law school, I didn't realize how competitive it was.
Yes, very much so, especially in Las Vegas.
Oh my gosh, yes. And, with the law school at that time being relatively new, it was still, we were able to get ranked very quickly. We've got now the #1 writing program in the nation. So we're doing big things here in Las Vegas.
We definitely are, you guys. Las Vegas is on the map.
Yes. So after I joined the big firm, I worked in the big firm for about 10 years. And then I got the opportunity to go in-house as a general counsel for a financial services company. So that's where I got to have the other perspective of not just working for a bunch of clients, but having one client where I was not only doing, legal work, which that was my job, but I was also able to get experience in sales and marketing and managing a team. So that was.
And while
really
you were
helpful.
doing this, you were already a mother of twins. Had you had any other of your other daughters yet?
So I had my 3 youngest daughters when I was at the big firm. So they were basically back to back to back. So my kids range in age. So my youngest is 11. My 4th daughter's about to be 13. Then I have a 14-year-old, and then the twins are 22.
So I love this, though, because it really does show that as women, we can do it all with help.
Right.
You have an amazing husband, like you have stated, you have family here. But I love that, just seeing that you can chase your dreams. Because I think a lot of times, and I know we're kind of segueing off a little bit, but we'll come right back to that. But a lot of times society tells us as women, you need to either be the stay-at-home mom, or you need to be the working mom, or you need to be the working woman who hasn't had children. If you really want to succeed in your career or be success in your field, then you can't be a mother as well, and you can't be a wife. But you really can.
Right.
It's all about prioritizing and chasing your dreams. And it is so important to have just people around you who support you, whether that be your significant other, your spouse, your friends, your family, people who will continuously encourage you, because there are going to be ups and downs, right?
Right.
It's a lot of work.
And I think that we need to share these stories.
Yeah,
that's
very
why
important.
I'm excited, to be here, to be able to share more about, like my background. And, people see you where you are, but they don't know.
They don't know how you got there.
don't know
And they
how,
don't know it's a lot of work, a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of worrisome nights, a lot of huge wins.
Right.
But then there's days that sometimes I'm sure, I don't know, when I was building my business, there were days that I would come home and I'd feel like I'm a failure. Am I not spending enough time with my kids? Am I spending too much time at the office? Am I building something big enough? Am I providing a life for these kids? Am I providing a life for my staff? Am I providing a life for my husband? Am I not giving enough time to myself? I mean, there's so many worries and so many balls in the air that we're trying to juggle as women.
Right. And it's funny that you just brought that up, because I was thinking there was a motivational speaker that I was listening to a few years ago. And she said, as women, there are so many things that we're trying to balance and juggle. And we've got all these balls in the air. And the key is you're going to know, you have to know that you're going to drop.
Yep.
You're going to drop a ball at some point. But try not to drop the same ball twice, or multiple times. So sometimes you're going to have to sacrifice time with your family. Sometimes you're going to have to sacrifice, something related to your work or your professional career, your business. There's going to be that give and take, but just try to make sure that you're balancing.
It's so important. And I have mentioned this multiple times, but because people ask me all the time, like, oh, you're so successful, you're where I want to be. Women will come to me and I'll say, ladies, let me tell you, it's not for not having a lot of leverage. And I like to bring this up because I don't want people to think I'm superwoman. I don't want people to think you're superwoman, even though you're great and I love you and idolize everything you do. But it's not for a lack of a lot of leverage. I have had amazing family. My kids have had the same nanny that's basically like their grandmother for 15 years. I have a great business partner. I have great staff. I have great agents that work for me. My team is amazing. It's not for lack of leverage. I can't be all places and all things. And you know what, you guys? That's okay.
Right.
It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to ask your husband, babe, today can you take the lead?
Right.
Babe, today can you get dinner? Babe, today can you go make the money? When you need a break, let me fill in. Let me do those things. Because that's really the key to any successful relationship, right? Is the taking care of each other when you're down or I'm up and I cheerlead you and you cheerlead me. It's really important.
It's the teamwork. Yeah, it's the partnership, the teamwork aspect. And like you said, asking for help. And I think sometimes we as women, and I've been guilty of this, is I'll just do everything.
Yep.
It's just like, well, forget
but
it.
then we
I'll
burn
just do
ourselves
it.
out.
Yeah. Right.
And then sometimes it even creates resentment where you didn't even ask for help.
Right.
And maybe you're resenting your kids. Like, why am I doing their laundry? Or you're resenting your husband. Like, why didn't he think to get the groceries this week? Why didn't he plan the vacation? Why didn't, and in the same point, it's actually not fair because you're not giving people the opportunity to try to help. I've been guilty of that too.
Yeah.
As these alpha or driven women get we get in these places. And one of the things I want to mention is your women decision makers, breakfasts that you do, luncheons, get-togethers. Sometimes you do like networking events. That was actually where I met you first time in person. So I fell in love with you via Facebook, social media. You guys know that we all fall in love with people that way. You had great energy. I loved what you were doing. I love any woman entrepreneur that's in business and going for her dreams. But I got to meet you at your Women's Decision Maker breakfast. And let me tell you guys, if you don't know what that is, she does these events. Is it every other month now?
Every other month.
Every other month. And they're generally free to come. And they have great speakers there. Some are very motivational. One was like a relationship coach. One was a business coach. One was like an organizational, all the things that we need as women. But I liked it because it's called Women Decision Makers. And what I took from that, and I'll let you, go into it please correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, you're doing a great job.
Okay, good. But what I took from that is that in a lot of our relationships, we are the decision makers. And I don't mean that means you have to be the breadwinner. Let me clarify, you guys. A lot of times we are the decision makers. Like if my kids are going to go see a doctor, I'm generally the one picking the doctor. Right. If I'm thinking about, which we're going to segue into estate planning, a life insurance, where my business is going, even if it's my husband's business or my significant other's business, I'm usually the one that's going to be doing that research because women, we're just a little more detailed for that. Right. It doesn't mean that our man can't do it. And sometimes you have co-ed events. But it's a lot of times we're taking on the brunt of making that decision. Those decisions, right? And so I loved this. And to get into a room with women, and they were all different levels, you guys. There were CEOs of high-level companies, and there were women that were just starting their home-based businesses. And it was so great because everybody was brilliant. Everybody had an amazing idea. These were people you wanted to brush shoulders with. These were people that you wanted to look up to identify with. Some of them have been mindset coaches. I've had a few on our podcast here. Just great business women. And I personally loved it because I was like, I need more of this. Like I left your event and I was so invigorated. I was like, I love this. I mean, was that the idea behind it?
Right. And so it's that has been such a blessing because the way that it kind of originated was doing the work that I do with estate planning. I was seeing that women tended to be more at the forefront of making those decisions, or at least driving, being the driving force behind getting to that point. Of
doing the research or something.
Exactly, right? And then they were the ones that were making the appointments and making sure, that they were following up with the process. So that's really where it came from, Women Decision Makers. And because I do have 5 daughters, I felt like, okay, I'd love to be able to do something with women that shows my daughters, that shows them that there is collaboration here, that there is a sisterhood, that we can fellowship together and support each other, and to celebrate the wins that you have, and to be able to shine the light and not feel like because your light is, the light is on you, that mine
is dimmed at all.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about that because we mentioned estate planning. So for those of you who don't know, let's just say we don't know what estate planning is. I don't know if I need estate planning. What makes me need estate planning? I had a great friend of mine the other day said to me, and he has assets, he has a business, he has a house, he has multiple rental properties, and he said, oh, I don't need life insurance because he's not married and doesn't have any kids. So he goes, I don't need any of that. And I go, no, you do, because you still have assets, you still have an estate, and where will that estate go if you die? He goes, oh, I'll go to my sisters if they're around, or my parents if they're around. But it's not an automatic thing, you guys. You actually have to put some vehicles in place in order for that to happen. So talk to me about what estate planning is and when do I know if I need it?
Yeah. So what estate planning is, that's really one of the biggest questions that I get because there's so many myths and misconceptions. So, sometimes people think of a will or a trust or life insurance. Those are components. Those can be components of an estate plan. But what an estate plan really should be is a comprehensive plan that addresses all types of contingencies. So if you are in an accident, if you're disabled, hospitalized, if you're incapacitated and you can't make your own medical decisions, end of life decisions, who would take care of your kids? Who would be able to make all of those really important decisions in the short term, long term, with your pets, with your spouse, your family, your assets, what happens to your assets when you're no longer here. So all of that is really, what is encompassed within estate planning. Now, who needs estate planning? Anyone that's over 18. So if you are over 18 years old, you are a legal adult.
Well, I was just thinking right when you said, like, if I was in an accident, would I want to burden my family to make a decision like, God forbid if they had to pull me off life support, or should they, do I need organ replacement, or should I do a major medical surgery? I would never want to burden, because then I have 3 kids. I could say one of them being like, pull her off life support. The other one being like, no, keep her on life support. And the other one being like, I don't know, let's flip a coin. Right.
And that's where conflict ends up happening. Yep. So there was a case that many people might remember from the 1990s, the Terry Schiavo case, where this woman was married. She actually had a healthcare directive that named her husband as the the agent to be able to make decisions. And she was unfortunately in a vegetative state. So she wasn't on life support, but she was being kept alive with a feeding tube. Yeah. And it just wasn't the quality of life. She couldn't speak. She couldn't do anything.
No quality of life.
Right. Yeah. So her husband decided to remove the feeding tube so that she would.
I do remember that case.
And her parents immediately objected and they took him to court. And the judge ruled that the feeding tube had to be replaced while this court case was pending. It lasted over 7 years.
Wow.
And it cost the family so much money in legal fees, medical fees.
Bankruptcy and probably.
Yeah, the emotional expense. And I'm sure that she thought that document she had
was good enough.
Right.
Because I would have thought it was good enough. I have a healthcare directive.
Right. And unfortunately, most of those types of documents are form documents. They're copy and paste. They're cookie cutter. They're not customized to you.
So it may not hold up in court is what you're saying.
Exactly. If there's ambiguity, if it's not drafted properly, just because it's called something doesn't mean that it's really.
You're scaring me. I'm going to have to get in and see you right away. I need my whole estate planning redone.
Right.
Okay, so tell me more. So beyond the healthcare, what else?
So I mentioned if you've got children, minor children, if something were to happen and, you don't make it home, you and I both have kids that are young. That was really scary to me. So even as a lawyer years ago, when I really sat down and thought about it, I realized that my kids would not be taken care of if Charles and I had gone on a date and we didn't make it home. Yeah. And what would end up happening is, CPS would show up, they would take our kids into protective custody. The authorities would be the ones that were making those short-term decisions.
To figure out if they can go to family, if they can't get a home family, where do they go to?
Yeah, and there are certain family members that, were blood related, but I would never want, my kids
or you just wouldn't want to burden with them. I mean, if you had older parents, my parents are still fairly young in their 60s, but if my parents were in their 80s, last thing I'd want to do is drop off, when I had a 10-year-old over to, it just wouldn't be fair.
Right. So just making sure if you've got, kids that you have a proper plan in place, short-term and long-term. So also like who would raise them, how they would be raised, providing for them financially. Also, if they happened to be young and you passed away, how they're to receive the assets that you're leaving to them. So,
So let me ask you a question about that. So let's say you are somebody like myself who has a trust. My trust is probably 17 years old at this point. I think it was established in 2005. Would I just go to you and have you amend my trust, or would I have you create a whole new trust and dissolve that trust? What would that step look like?
Yeah, it would really depend on what you have and what you're wanting moving forward. So we do what's called a family wealth planning session, where you would book a session with one of the attorneys at our office. It's typically 2 hours, and it doesn't always take that long. Yeah. But we want to make sure that we've got enough time where you'll be able to come in. We'll look at your trust. We'll look at those documents. What are your concerns? We'll ask you lots of questions. We'll do an analysis basically of what would happen, whether you have a plan or not. So most people don't have a plan. About 70% don't have any planning in place. So most of the clients that we're seeing actually don't have planning. But in either case, if you have planning or not, we do that analysis to see if something happened right now based on where things are. What would that look like? What would probate look like? And we can talk about that. What would your tax situation look like? What would happen to your kids, your family, the wealth that you've accumulated? So we do that analysis, and then based on what you share with me as far as your goals, like I want to make it easier for my kids or my family. I want to make sure that my kids don't get a lump sum of money at age 18 or 21. I want to make sure that they're protected from creditors or a future spouse that might try to take half, in a divorce or things like that. So whatever those goals are that you have, we'll get really clear on them. And then I'll go into the options that we have as far as planning and how we can work together. And I'll make recommendations, based on what you've shared with me. Here are my recommendations on what we do. You've got an existing plan. Here are the options. We could do a restatement. We could do a new plan. We could do these amendments. So I like to
in the estate planning, you're creating a trust?
It depends. So a lot of times we are, but that's also where the clients are deciding, is that something that I want? And, just going back to what estate planning is and the basics, a will versus a trust.
Well, and I can tell you from the real estate side, you guys, just real property assets, I can tell you that wills in the real estate side are not recognized in Nevada if they're not, the property needs to be recorded into a trust. So if you were to pass away, and your property is not recorded into a trust, even if you have a trust, it then can be part of probate. I'm not an attorney, but I have one sitting right next to me. But it can become then part of probate. And probate, number one, it's a process. So in Las Vegas, I've seen them happen, uncontested probates. I've seen them happen a couple months. I've seen contested probates take years.
Right.
And during that time, let's say that was your parents' house and they have a mortgage. Somebody needs to continue paying those bills. And let's say they didn't have life insurance or they do, or maybe that's going to be contested in the probate. Somebody else may have to come to the table and front that money. Now, they may get paid back depending on what the judge decides and everything. But let's say it's years. Right. Could you afford your parents' utility bills, their HOA, their mortgage, their taxes, their hazard insurance for a couple of years on top of that?
That's
if it's contested.
Yeah, common mistake. People think like, oh, well, I've got a will and I only have a house and I've got these bank accounts or whatever those assets are. It's just going to go to my kids or whoever, when I'm not here. Well, yeah, if you don't have your property in a trust, then all of those assets that you have that are titled in your name are subject to probate.
Well, and the same thing, even my sister is a big executive at Bank of America, and even if your bank account is in your name, and it's not in your trust name, even if that person passed away and you bring in a death certificate and you bring in the trust, many a times the bank will not divvy out those funds until you get a court order or something, goes through probate that says now that they can release those funds. And they don't care if it's $1 in that account or $10 million. Now, if it was in the trust name and you came in with the death certificate and you showed that you were the executor of the trust, now you have legal rights to that property which is in that trust or in a safety deposit box or anything like that.
Yeah, when you have a trust, when you have a properly set up estate plan, that includes a revocable living trust. There are lots of other trusts that we can incorporate as well. But once you have a properly set up plan like that and the assets are titled or funded into your trust, then we're able to completely bypass the court process. So we can avoid probate, we can avoid all of those expenses that come with it, and everything can be handled privately and immediately. So
now, if you have life insurance, that should also, I'm again not an attorney, but again, I have one sitting next to me, but generally, I have always been taught, and please tell me if this is not correct, that my life insurance should filter into my trust. And then my trust will divvy all of the assets as I have set forward. And rather than just giving my life insurance policy, now Shane is the sole beneficiary of that. But now she's not. Now the trust is the beneficiary, and then she may be one or the only beneficiary. She may be one of many of the trust, but the money should go into the trust. Is that how you would say?
So it really depends on what your goals are and the type of insurance and the type of assets that you have, the type of plan. So that's where we would guide, clients. But one option that you do have is to name beneficiaries. So life insurance is a beneficiary designated asset, meaning you can name a beneficiary to receive those funds when you're no longer here. And you can name an individual, you can name the trust. One reason why we recommend naming a trust is because if you've got kids, for example, and they're under 18, you do not want to name them on your life insurance policies because that's going to automatically trigger a probate, and then that's going to tie up those assets until they turn 18.
And then you have to get a guardian or a custodian or something, right? Okay.
Someone, there's going to have to be an executor over that money. It might be court appointed if you don't have a plan.
And then it might go into like a court blocked account, which they can't touch until they're of legal age.
Right. And then when they turn 18, then they basically get those assets in
free
their
and clear,
name.
And it's like, hey, now if you want to go gamble in Vegas with them, there you go. Here's all your money.
So that's the danger of not having a plan in place and or having minors named as beneficiaries on life insurance. So one of the best ways or the better ways to be able to avoid those types of situations is to name your trust as the beneficiary, and then within your trust we can specify how you want these assets to be distributed. And another benefit is, and this is where a lot of wealth can be created, is by setting up what are called lifetime asset protection trusts, what we call them in my practice, where you can have your kids set up with a trust. So it's built into your plan. Okay. So when those assets, including that life insurance, get passed to them, it's not directly in their name. It goes into a trust for them. And then you as the parents or the grantors of your own trust will be able to decide at what age they're able to access or withdraw money from their trust for whatever reason, or when they can step into managing their own
Now, does that help with taxes at all? Are there taxes, inheritance tax?
Potentially. So Nevada doesn't have a state estate tax. Like we have a federal estate tax right now of about 40%. And that also does change. So there are, again, a lot of benefits, as you mentioned, with having a trust set up, not only for ultimately your beneficiaries like your kids, but also if you're married and, your spouse, the assets are going to be passed, from you to your spouse and then to your kids. There are ways that we can either eliminate altogether or at least mitigate and things like capital gains taxes, getting that step up in basis with having the property in your trust so that we're able to move that basis forward. So it's not, you're not getting taxed on this amount, but a much
smaller amount, which is very important. Like I know I personally, the way that my current trust is set up is I have 3 children and they get money at certain ages. So they don't get all of it. They each get an equal third share, but then it would be at whatever age I've decided. So let's say it's 21, 25, and 28. So if they got some money at 21 and for some reason they made a bad investment into a business or to crypto or to real estate and they lost it, they don't lose all their money. So then at 25, they kind of get a second chance, maybe if they need to buy a house. Or there are some exceptions in there that says, if you're buying a house, you can take X amount of dollars out at it. It doesn't matter the age. So it can go directly to a title company.
And what you mentioned as far as kind of staggering the ages, that is pretty much the default for how most trusts have been set up in the past, where it's like, okay, if something happens, my kids would get a third at age 25, a third at age 30, and a third at age 35. But even with those types of distribution schemes, it's better. So it's much better than having it just outright at age 18, right? But it's still an outright distribution, meaning when they get that money, if they had a gambling problem, if they were married, that could go into their community property, with their spouse. So if you're wanting to protect the assets and protect your kids and make sure that the wealth stays in your family and they're able to build it sheltered, where all third parties are prohibited from being able to have access to those assets, there are other ways. So I'll review your trust and we'll see.
Yeah, that's really important because I love my children, but none of them are married yet. None of them are, only one is even at age to be married even. But last thing I'd want to do is, gosh, forbid I died and then they get millions of dollars and then they marry somebody and then they get divorced 2 years later and that spouse is like, I want half of that.
Right.
Like, no, please don't do that. So it's really important. A lot of things to think about here that I wouldn't have thought about.
Right.
Now, what else do you do besides estate planning? Tell me more about your firm.
Yeah, so we do also business. So for business owners that either have an existing business and they need to make sure that things are taken care of from a legal, insurance, financial, and tax standpoint, we do what's called a lift audit. So we'll take a look, make sure that everything is set up the way that it should. We also help a lot of business owners or aspiring business owners that are starting their businesses, and they need to make sure that things are set up from a legal standpoint, especially getting their corporate structures and incorporating as far as an LLC or corporation.
So that's great. So I didn't even know that because a lot of people do come to us and they say, okay, I have this great idea or I have this great company I'm going to invest in, but I don't know where to get started. So you would do their LLC or their C Corp or S Corp or whatever you think it is that they need to do.
Right.
And they can work with you maybe alongside like a CPA as well?
Yes.
Okay.
So we have, obviously we can help on the legal side. And then when it comes to businesses, of course, there are other team members, right?
Yeah, that you would refer out to and say, this is next expert.
CPA, financial advisors, the tax advisors, bookkeepers, all of those things, insurance professionals, those are all really important components of your business. So we want to make sure that all of those things are taken care of.
I love that. And then also you do personal injury.
Personal injury, yeah.
So slip and fall, car accidents, some type of injury that happen, people then go and see you.
Any type of personal injury.
How many attorneys are at your firm? Tell us a little bit about your office staff.
So staff-wise, we've got about 15 now.
Wow, good for you.
Yeah, so we're growing. It's exciting. We've been voted Best of Las Vegas 14 times. Yeah.
Yes, you guys, please vote again. They're up for the running for Best of Las Vegas. Again, she really is the best in Las Vegas. So take my word for it. Vote, vote, vote. We'll put a little link when we post this. We'll put a link in the bio of where you guys can go on and vote. And if you've used their business before, please leave a great review. We would love all of it. Comments in the comment line as well too.
Yes, appreciate all of those things. But yeah, we are actually in the middle of Best of Las Vegas voting. So voting runs until September 22nd, and you can vote multiple times.
Okay, so, you guys vote every day.
Every day, from all devices, from all of your accounts. That's awesome. We are nominated in multiple categories. So estate planning, personal injury, elder law, kids protection planning, best woman-owned business, networking. So we've got several categories. So just check all of the boxes, and it takes like 10 seconds. So
great.
Yeah.
Great. So, okay, what made you want to go in? So you talked a little bit about the story with your dad and what happened with his business, but going to be, first off, a woman-owned business and a woman attorney, it can be, intimidating
Right.
for a lot of people and a lot of women, and they wouldn't know where to start. Of course, yeah, you start at law school. We know all that. But what made you say, no, I'm going to go for this. This is my dream. I'm not going to, because I'm sure there was a million obstacles that came in your way, because they do, all of us as business owners. And what just kept you motivated? What made you keep going for that dream?
You know, I think those fears that you mentioned were what kept me from doing it earlier.
Wow.
And my husband was the one that had said from the beginning, you know, when I was in law school, yeah, you know, you're going to open your own firm. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And he's the dreamer. And for me, I was just like, I just need to like be able to get through law school, you know, work and get a good income so that we can, you know, support our family. We already had kids at the time. And I think that's one of the reasons why I stayed in the corporate world for so long.
Because it's a little safer.
Yes, it's safer. You get a paycheck, you know, and you know, not the stability is there.
Yeah.
So, but what I realized was I wasn't being fulfilled work-wise.
Yeah.
And I just felt like, oh gosh, there's like so much more that I would want to do and I can do. Yeah. And what ended up happening after being, you know, a lawyer for gosh, 12, 13, no, almost 15 years actually at that point was I lost my job.
Wow.
So I was laid off, and we knew that this was coming because the company that I was working for was being acquired by.
So there was a transition happening.
Right. So we knew that that was happening, but we thought it was going to happen about 6 months later than it did.
So you almost weren't ready.
Right. I wasn't. We didn't have anything. I had 0 clients and nothing set up as far as our law firm. But I don't know. I think it was, you know, just my husband and I being able to come together and come up with a plan and knowing that somehow it was going to work out. You know, sometimes you're just guided by faith and, you know, whatever it is that you believe in, you know, God or a higher power. And we took that step and we opened the firm and started, you know, working out of my home office, which is kind of funny that things come full circle because started there, we have the office, the actual office, but I also do a lot of work from home, you know, and so now that things are growing and we've got a great team and I can take a step back to do a lot of other things that are important. You know, getting the information out there in the community is really important to me. I've seen over the course of my legal career how simple mistakes, you know, just not even knowing, you just don't know what you don't know when it comes to estate planning and legal planning in general. And I kept seeing it happening over and over and over again. And I wanted to make sure that less people were being impacted that way and that they could feel good and get the true peace of mind and knowing that they would have a plan and that their families would be taken care of. So
it's so really important because, you know, you think about, I mean, as every parent, I don't care if you're a man or a woman, right? But every parent, your number one job in life is to take care of your family and take care of your children. And as a spouse, your number 2 job after your children is to take care of your spouse, right? And that I don't just mean that financially, I mean that in so many different ways, right? But to provide them love and safety and security. And that's part of going into it. And so I love hearing your story because, Shane, if people go online and they look at you, and I'm just going to give you the perception.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
The perception is, so she's beautiful. Her husband is gorgeous. They're the most beautiful couple you've ever seen together. And then they have these beautiful children and they're successful. And you see it and you're like, oh, this is like the perfect family. Like there's no hard days in their life. They're gorgeous. They're amazing. She works out all the time. She's always super positive. Her kids are well educated. They're good kids. Like you're like, oh, my life can't be that perfect, right? Because that's the perception is like you're this perfect, beautiful family. You have this beautiful firm. Everyone loves you, which is amazing. But I like that you touched on just the realness of building a business, building a family. I'm sure being in a relationship since you were in high school, having daughters. I mean, let me tell you, I have 2 daughters. Be still my heart. One is a little easier for me to manage. One gives me a run for my money, you guys. So I'm just going to tell you, when they're teenagers, it's difficult.
There's always one.
There's always one where and I love that one because she's so much like me and she's so independent. But there's times I'm like, no, work with me, not against me. I'm your mother, you know. So, I mean, I just love that you touch on that realness of it. Everything, you guys, is hard because we call this Vegas real talk for a reason. I want to get real for a second. Marriage is hard. Relationships are hard. Relationships with your kids are hard.
Right.
Teaching your kid, the best advice I could ever give to somebody if they're not parents is the shocker moment for me was when I had to realize, like, oh my gosh, they're actual independent people and they're going to make decisions independent of me. Right. So I'm going to tell them because I see the train coming. Yeah. You've had this, right? You're like, don't do that. It's a bad idea. You're going to, you know, they're going to date the wrong boy. It's going to break their heart. Or they're going to take the accelerated class that you know they're going to fail at because they're pushing themselves really hard or just whatever, right? You see the train coming and you're like, they're going to go to a party where you know there's probably going to be drama with other girls and all this stuff. And as a parent, you want to protect. Your immediate instinct is to go in and protect and say, no, don't do that. And they want to do it anyways. Right. And then you realize, I have no control over what this person does. They're a person.
That's the hardest part, I think.
Oh, so hard.
Of life and also being a parent. But life is full of transition. That's what it is. It's constantly changing, constantly evolving. And I feel like as soon as I feel like I've got something down, like, yeah, I'm kicking ass. Yeah. Like, I got this. Now I know, I figured it all out. Yeah. Then something happens and it's like, oh, man.
It's like a reset. You're like, okay, God, I guess that wasn't this path you wanted me on. Right. We're going to go ahead and make a sharp left, sharp right. It's funny because the same thing, I mean, I don't know if you're anything like me, but I know I was like, oh, I know the whole plan for my family. I want my husband to do this. I want my kids to do this. I want my kids to go to school here. So I had a daughter who went to college. She had about 40 acceptance letters. Like every school in the world wanted her to come. And here's the funny story. So we lived in our same neighborhood since my daughter was in second grade. And she's now 19. So when we moved in our neighborhood, there's 5 of our little girls that are all best friends. And they all said from the time they were in second grade, oh, we're all going to go to college together. Of course, you're thinking 5 girls, they're going to have a million spats. They're not even going to probably be friends in 6 months. Who knows what? Well, to my surprise, they all stayed best friends their whole life. Aww. So one of the girls had an older brother, and her brother went off to Reno. So they were like Irish twins, like 11 months apart. And so all the girls were like, we're all going to Reno. Well, literally, my daughter got 40 acceptance letters, scholarships from all different amazing schools. And Reno's a great school, you guys. Don't get me wrong. I love it. But amazing schools were like knocking on her door, begging her to come. And she was like, no, Mom, I'm going to Reno with my friends. And I'm like, wait, what? And what are you studying? And then she wanted to go for education and business. And I was like, no, go for law. Like, so we have a plan in our heads of what we want our kids to do. And I'm like, these schools are, bringing you these letters. And then you can go to Boyd Law School if you want, or you can go to, Baylor. You can go anywhere you want, right? And so she's like, no, that's not what I want to do. And I'm like, wait, what?
Ultimately, they're going to make their own
choices.
They're
going to make their own decision. And so I always joke, you guys, and I always say that Harvard could have come to my house in a golden limo with doves coming out of the limo and rolled out the red carpet. My daughter would be like, nope, I don't want to go because I'm going to go with my friends over here to whatever school they choose. So it's funny when you have to realize as a parent, you have to let them make their own decisions. And sometimes, guess what? You guys are going to fail.
Right.
And you're like, oh, but I tried to protect you from that. And even as a business owner, entrepreneur, I always call my agents, my staff, I always call them like my baby birds. And so it's like, no, don't do this. And then you realize you got to let them make their own decisions. And sometimes they're going to fail and sometimes they're going to succeed. And because I fail and succeed every day.
Right.
And so that's a big kind of eye-opener where I was like, oh, I have to let people be people? Oh, man. That was a hard thing for me to do when you want to control it.
I think I'm similar in that way where, I want to have a plan. I want to know what to expect. Yeah. I want to be able to, check all the boxes and, do all the things. But I've learned as I've gotten older that, you can't control everything. And that when things don't happen according to plan, it's for a reason. And sometimes the greatest opportunities in my life have come after a devastating blow.
For sure.
So I think it's just, that's one thing that I have tried to keep at the front of my mind is perspective. I try to just be positive and be grateful every day. Some days are going to be rough and I'm going to be tired and people are going to work my nerves and my kids are going to be fighting about whatever, this or that, or I'm going to have, a negative interaction or communication with my spouse or, whatever those things are.
Because we all have those days.
We all have them. Yeah, they happen. And I think when I'm able to take that step back and just take a breath and just be like, okay, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Let's put things in perspective. I'm constantly reframing.
Yes.
Reframing is what I'm always doing. And, in the mornings, sometimes when I'm getting up or I don't want to get up, my alarm goes off and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm tired. But I'll get up and I'll say, I get to do this. I get to go work
I have
out.
to. Isn't that the best thing? And reframing too is when they say when rejection is not rejection, it's just redirection.
Yes.
And so there's so many times that I've been redirected and I'm like, okay, God, and again, whatever you believe in, you could be universe, it could be whatever, but I'm like, okay, God, you're redirecting me. Let me hear you. Let me go silent for a moment. Let me see where you want me to go and then just lead me. And let's see what happens with, being led that way and allowing the spirit, the universe, whatever, to lead us to wherever the next path is. And a lot of times it turns out just fine or even better than you thought it was going to be. But isn't that a hard one to learn?
It is. And that's something, when we were talking about why and when I started the firm, really, if it was up to my husband, it would have been years and years earlier.
Yeah.
But the timing just, had to happen the way that it did because I wouldn't have been in the position or been ready really to do all the things that we get to do now. Yeah. And that has been, again, one of the best things about having my firm is, it's a family it's a family affair. My husband is a partner in this business with me, and he's not a lawyer, but he does all the non-lawyer stuff. You know, he does the marketing, he does
which
the
gives
operations.
you the opportunity to do what you are best at, which is so great. Again, so your partnership at home,
Yes,
your partnership at work. So, and I'm sure that has taken a little bit to kind of craft that to make sure that you guys can work together at home, work together, you know, but I'm sure when you get home, you have to just take off that hat, that work hat and put on like wife and mom and spouse hat.
So I would like to say that happens, but the reality is our life and our work is all one.
Intermingled, right?
Because especially with the work that we do when, you know, we are working with families, you know, and kids and business owners, and these are people that we are, you know, we are all of those things. And so we don't necessarily have that distinction. And sometimes I think it's an advantage and sometimes it's a disadvantage because if we don't allow ourselves to have that break, then it becomes, you know, it can become overwhelming. And I think it's important. And sometimes we do say, okay, we'll just talk about that later, you know,
which is smart. I mean, you have to understand that balance. So I just want to make sure before we wrap this up, if there's anything else we need to touch on, but I'm going to make sure that in this, you guys, when we post this podcast, you're going to see in the link right here, we're going to have a link to Shane's website so you can look at Young Law Group. Please reach out to them for all your estate planning. I'm going to go immediately as soon as she can get me in and relook at all of my stuff. Because even if you have a trust, you guys, even if you have an estate, you have a will, you have whatever, all the things are you think you have, if it's been a while, like for mine, it's been 17 years. I've acquired a lot of life changes since then. I've had additional kids since I did the original estate planning. I have had different assets. I've sold things, bought things, done different businesses. I probably need a refresh. Maybe I need a whole new thing. Who knows? She's going to tell me. So I'm going to get right in. Also, you guys, make sure to vote. Best of Las Vegas. We want to make sure to get the voting until September 23rd? 22nd. 22nd. Okay. We're going to put a link in here too. So 2 links to get to Shane's website, Young Law Group, and to vote for her for Best of Las Vegas. I truly believe in her. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap this up?
Women Decision Makers, our next event.
What is the next one? I will be
September 28th. Okay. So 9/28 at 9 a.m. at Art House, and it's a Wednesday.
Is it free to attend?
It's free. It's complimentary.
September 28th at 9 a.m.
And I'm really excited this time. The topic is going to be meeting the judges and candidates. So a lot of the female judges are going to be there, and they'll be able to share about who they are, their platforms, so that we'll be able to in turn make informed decisions when it comes to
very important, voting. You guys. If this is your city, get out there and vote and get to know the candidates that are running. I know I have lots of girlfriends out there that are judges or that are attorneys that were sitting on the bench, all those things. And what they do is really difficult. So get out there, vote. Please come to Women's Decision Makers. Again, that's September 28th at 9 a.m. at Art House. It is free. Please come out there. And you get to mix and mingle, and you get to meet other business owners, other women that are, where you want to be, or maybe they need a little bit of encouragement from you as well. So get out there. So that's it, Shane. I appreciate having you on the show. Thank you so much. Again, Shane Jasmine, the Young Law Group. I'm Jillian Batchelor, the Vegas Real Talk. We appreciate you having us on and watching our show, and we'll see you next week. Bye, guys.